Okay, let's get right at this topic, which is not really one of my regular topics, but I just want to start out by saying that DJs are idiots, and music journalism in quotes, is not a thing. People who review CDs and go to concerts and write reviews of concerts and occasionally interview rock stars and country western singers, those people are not journalists. Now, let me just back up to where this all started. I'm driving home from my night shift the other day, and I hear about this controversy having to do with the Country Music Awards, which I do not watch. It's not my type of music. I'm much more of a punk rocker, although I do like some music in every category of music. I like some country. I like classic country like Johnny Cash or George Jones, Loretta Lynn. I like some gospel like the staple singers. I like some jazz like Vince Gilardi or Louis Prima. I like a lot of R&B. I love R&B. I like James Brown, and I like blues. I like Buddy Guy and Sugar Hill, and a lot of people in those categories. Love Ike and Tina and Curtis Mayfield, and a lot of people in the blues and R&B categories. I love rock music, it's my favorite, and I love punk rock music. I love a little bit of everything. I even like some orchestral music and movie soundtracks. And I even like some Broadway show tunes. I have a broad base of musical knowledge and appreciation, but I don't like new country. My wife does. My wife listens to that crap, so there you have it. I like to tease her. I tell her she's the only black woman who listens to new country music and watches NASCAR. And people wonder why I have a black cowgirl in some of my comics. Could there be a connection? But yeah, so I'm not a person that would watch the Country Music Awards, but I am aware of their existence. So I'm driving home the other day, and I listened to a rock station, and they started talking about this controversy about the Country Music Awards. And the controversy was because the Country Music Association, I guess, had passed the word that they didn't want so-called, music journalists on the red carpet asking political questions about political affiliation, asking questions about the very recent, very tragic mass shooting in the Texas church, which just happened last week, asking questions, or this week, I guess, asking questions about the Second Amendment and gun rights, because that's a hot issue after every mass shooting. Becomes demagogue. This is the demagoguery. This is how we deal with mass shootings, is we immediately start arguing about gun control. And I guess that soothes everybody down, and it comes to nothing, and then we move on to the next mass shooting. Anyhow, Country Music Association, quite reasonably, because they're putting on a TV show that's designed to push country music and to put people over. It's not a political talk show. This isn't the O'Reilly Factor. This isn't CNN. It's not Rachel Maddow. So quite reasonably, I think, they asked these so-called music journalists to keep their questions appropriate to the event. And there was a lot of pushback, for some reason, by so-called music journalists who don't understand that that's just a fake title designed to make them feel better about their job. You're not journalists. So there was a lot of pushback. And the Country Music Association, I guess, retracted it, and it's already over now, so I didn't watch it to see if those sorts of questions were asked. I don't know if they were or weren't, and I don't know if the people did a good or bad job of answering them. But I do know this. The Country Music Association was entirely right to tell these so-called music journalists that those questions are inappropriate to the event. They simply are not germane to the event. And in case I'm listening to these DJs, and these DJs are all outraged by it. They're on a rock station, so what do they care? But they're outraged by it. They're like, well, they don't want them asking what their opinion on the Second Amendment is, or what their opinion on the Texas shooting is. And this female DJ says, well, if they're good music journalists, those should be their first questions. No, bitch. You're confused. You're confused by a title. Let me clear it up for you. A sanitation engineer is a janitor. Okay? He doesn't have a degree in engineering, and he doesn't drive a train. Okay, a domestic engineer is a housewife. Again, she doesn't have a degree in engineering and she does not drive a train. A lot of titles are just designed to make people feel more important than they actually are. A music critic, which is what they are properly called, because so-called music journalists are in the same category as movie critics, television critics, restaurant reviewers, and theater reviewers. They review live events and they review entertainment product, music CDs, in the same way that a video game reviewer reviews video games. Reviewing things is not journalism, and anybody can do it. And if you're on YouTube right now, you know that anybody can do it. Okay? The only thing that so-called music journalists do that comes anywhere close to resembling an act of journalism is conducting interviews. But as you well know, if you're on YouTube right now, anybody can conduct an interview. And you don't have to be a journalist. Watch late night television. Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, David Letterman, Jimmy Kimmel, all these various people through the years that have done late night television. They conduct thousands of interviews. Are they journalists? No, of course not. Who's the best interviewer in America? Well, you could get a good argument about that. Excuse me. I think one of the best interviewers in America is Howard Stern. Howard Stern's a great interviewer. He does long interviews and he gets people to talk about things that they're not entirely comfortable talking about. And he makes them comfortable. And they admit things that they had no intention of admitting. And he gets things out of them that other interviewers don't get. Because he's Howard Stern. Because he's a great interviewer. But is Howard Stern a journalist? Of course not. He would laugh at the concept. I mean, if you asked Howard Stern if he was a journalist, he would probably bust out laughing. It's just a ridiculous question. Okay. Do you ever see Joe Rogan interviewing people on his podcast? You can watch those on YouTube. I've watched some of them. He's interviewed a lot of interesting people. And Joe Rogan is actually a very good interviewer. But he's not a journalist. I mean, he'd be the first one to tell you he's not a journalist. So the only thing that so-called music journalists ever do that even resembles journalism, because writing reviews and doing criticism of CDs and concerts, that's not journalism. That's not what journalism is. Journalism is investigating the news or reporting the news. Reviewing an entertainment product is not reporting news and it's not investigating news. And when they do their interviews, it's not like a political show on CNN or Fox or somewhere else where the interviewer is, really grilling the person because the subject is very serious and people's lives and wealth are at stake. No, a music journalist, so-called, does an interview and it's a puff piece. It's the same interview. The music journalist, if he's good at his job, is asking the same kind of questions the star's own publicist would ask him. The music journalist's job is to put the star over in the interview. And I can prove that through simple logic. Okay? Because these stars, whether you're involved in country western or pop or rock or whatever you're involved in, all these big stars have a team around them. They have the record label people. They might have a personal agent. They probably have a manager. They might have a personal publicist, or they might use the record label publicist. But any way you cut it, they have a team of people around them. Now, if the music journalist was intending to do anything other than put the person over and make them look good, they would not get access. The team would block that. The team's job, and these people are well paid, publicists, record label flags, these people are well paid and they know their job. Their job is to prevent the star from saying things that make him look stupid and hurt the sales of his CDs and hurt the ticket sales. Okay? Any so-called music journalist that would ask difficult or embarrassing or hard to answer questions in an interview would no longer get access to celebrities. Very quickly they would be out of the business of music journalists. And if you think about it, you know that's a fact. Okay, stars don't have to give interviews to people they don't want to give interviews to. You embarrass a star one time or ask him an awkward question, he's probably going to walk out of the interview. And if he doesn't walk out of the interview, he will never give you another interview. Because asking embarrassing questions, putting stars on the spot, demanding political opinions, asking them to weigh in on things like constitutional issues, all that stuff is not helping sell the CD. It's not helping sell the tickets. And if you're not helping push the product and put the star over, you're not going to continue to get access. So there's no such actual thing as music journalism, unless it's a real journalist digging into a musical story because there's some kind of news in it. Okay, like if the Boston Symphony Orchestra was skimming money out of the grant it got from the state, you know, and not spending it on what they said they were spending it on. And the director of the orchestra or the conductor was secretly skimming money and spending it on hookers or crack and whatever, meth. Okay, that would be a news story related to music. And that would be looked into by a real journalist. It would not be looked into by a so-called music journalist. There's no such actual thing as music journalists. Music journalists are just glorified publicists. Okay, they're reviewers most of the time, and when they go into interview mode, they are a publicist, they are a shill, they are a flack, they are a hack. They are working for the publication, but their job in an interview setting is to put the star over and make him look good, to feed him softball questions that he can easily answer. The music journalist's job in an interview is to ask questions like, you haven't put out an album for 4 years. What's it like coming back after that break? And what inspired you to write this song? And is that song a reference to this other thing? And oh, you're so talented. Where did you get all your talent from? That's the sort of questions so-called music journalists are supposed to ask. And the only fucking thing they should be asking on the red carpet of an awards show is, where did you get that dress? How do you feel being nominated? Isn't it a thrill to be here? And other softball questions of that ilk. And while I don't like new country music, the Country Music Association was absolutely correct in the first place to tell these inflated egos that call themselves music journalists that you don't have the right to come to our event, stand on our red carpet, which, by the way, you're not allowed to stand on unless we let you. You don't have the right to stand on our red carpet, on our live network television event, and ask inappropriate questions. They were entirely within their rights to do that, and they shouldn't have caved in. Let me close with a final thought from Howard Stern. Howard Stern, many years ago, was talking about radio DJs, and I mentioned in passing the idiotic DJ that said that journalists should ask those sorts of questions. Let me just say that radio DJs are, as in Howard Stern's words, the lowest rung of the entertainment business. Quote, right below rodeo clowns, unquote. Well, music journalists are the lowest rung of the print journalism business, and they're not really journalists any more than the guy that does the crossword puzzle in the paper is a journalist, or the guy that does the bridge column is a journalist. Okay, Dear Abby was not a journalist. She didn't pretend to be. Not everything in a newspaper or magazine is journalism. But so-called music journalists are actually critics. They're less important than theater critics, less important than movie critics, and they may be marginally, they're less important than video game critics, I believe. They may be marginally more important than restaurant critics, but they're right down there at the bottom of the barrel, even among the critics. Okay, and they're definitely not journalists. So that's the bottom line on that. Music journalists, it's a fake term, just like sanitation engineer. A music journalist is no more a journalist than a sanitation engineer has a degree in engineering. It's bullshit. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. I've got some really interesting geek stuff coming up, and I'm going to be doing some interesting geek videos about comic and movies, including, here's a preview, a movie called King Kong versus the Snake Phantom, which I know you've never heard of. I'm halfway through watching it now, and I'll do a video on it. That's a preview. And until next time, take care.